Injury and despondence set the stage for heroism or cowardice.
Darkest Dungeon is a game where the player constructs a band of adventurers to explore procedurally generated dungeons. The game takes place in a dark fantasy setting with a high emphasis on horror. Darkest Dungeon, unlike most RPGs, focuses on both the physical and mental toll that fighting against the horrors of the night would have on a person. To emphasize these themes of dread and despair, Darkest Dungeon uses salience, the stress mechanic, and self-determination theory to effectively deliver a cohesive ludonarrative experience. Salience is the structuring of visual information in order of importance, including color, positioning, perspective, and overlap. In the case of Darkest Dungeon, the color black is the primary color. Dark shading in the overworld, black shadows overlapping character facial features, and the primary use of the color black in the UI. The use of salience affects the ludonarrative dimension by emphasizing the darkness of the world. At all points of interaction, the player is constantly bombarded by the color black. This presents a dark and mysterious aura that surrounds the world. Not only that, but all the characters are always smiling or frowning, and the use of black to cover their eyes paints a picture of a character that is either always manic or always miserable. The salience in the game creates a feeling of uneasiness that is present through the entire experience and feeds into the dark horror narrative of the game by having an aesthetic that emphasizes the narrative themes of dread and despair.
Ringing ears, blurred vision, the end approaches.
The stress mechanic is the primary mechanic that differs Darkest Dungeon from most other RPGs. As your characters venture into the different dungeons, their stress will exponentially increase. Your goal is to keep your stress as low as possible. If your stress peaks, your character's resolve will be tested. This will result in a strong temporary buff or a debilitating temporary debuff. The mechanic feeds so well into the ludonarrative dimension because it fully emphasizes the themes of dread. As the players progress through a dungeon, there is a constant sense of dread as the stress meter goes up. This climaxes when the character's resolve is tested and fails. The player is filled with an overwhelming feeling of despair as one of your party members now becomes an active detriment to the party. As the characters are swallowed up by the Darkest Dungeon, so is the player, leading to an engaging and cohesive ludonarrative experience.
More blood soaks the soil, feeding the evil therein.
Self-determination theory suggests that people can be driven by connection and relation. In other words, they are driven by being attached to other people. Your characters in Darkest Dungeons can permanently die, so as you upgrade their abilities and equipment, you can't help but become more attached to this character as you see them grow and overcome adversity. When that character dies, however, the player is once again filled with the same dread they've been conditioned to feel throughout the game. Darkest Dungeon is a masterclass in ludonarrative storytelling, from the aesthetics to the mechanics to the psychological theories that it implements. Darkest Dungeons shows game designers how much more of an impact games can have when the narrative becomes part of the gameplay. Thank you so much for watching.